Hello everyone and welcome back. I was looking at some current astrology and there was something that looked to me to be pretty significant coming up. And in general, I've been wanting to talk about Lionsgate and I've been thinking and pondering a lot about Lionsgate. So we're going to get into that today. So we have a number of things corresponding to Leo all at once. Jupiter just entered Leo on June 30th, and it will be there for about a year. And Jupiter visits each sign every 12 years. And Jupiter, to me, represents a state that humanity is working toward. So I find that really significant when Jupiter is in a new sign for the next little over a year. In fact, we'll have exactly a year with Jupiter in Leo from the point in time that I'm really going to start to be talking about in this episode, which is the transit of the lunar nodes that happens on July 26th. And so it'll be exactly a year after that Jupiter is going to leave Leo on July 26th of next year. So I just thought of that. That's kind of interesting. And we're going to get more into each of these things individually, but I just want to set the stage for you for what sort of period of time we're looking at. And it's starting, at least for me and how I'm looking at it, with the lunar nodes transiting on July 26th, which takes us into the whole Lionsgate period of time, which goes all the way until August 12th, peaking at August 8th. But what's going to close this sort of window of time that I want to look at of Lionsgate is actually a solar eclipse in Leo on August 12th. So let's set the stage with the lunar nodes in particular, which I'm seeing as a literal stage. It's a flat, straight line between the 2 points. This is actually connected to the astral plane, which my understanding is that whenever our lunar nodes return to the place that it was at birth for us, our dreams become really, really significant. And you can also see this in the midpoint of that time because it actually occurs every 18 years and 7 months. And so the halfway point, which would be like 9 years, 3.5 months, that also matters because you'll have kind of the opposite of the north and south nodes will be opposite, but it'll sort of be on the same line as your lunar nodes were when you were born. And this represents the astral plane, which is of course connected to our dreams, connected to our desires, connected to sort of polarity and emotions and the soul movement of humanity. So our lunar nodes will be transiting into Leo and its opposite sign, Aquarius. So once again, we've got Leo. So that's why I really wanted to look at this time and just see this like big sort of window of Leo energy that's really happening. So the nodes shift into a new sign about every year and a half. So just keep in mind that we are coming from Virgo and Pisces, moving into Leo and Aquarius, and that will be the case for the next year and a half. And this will be affecting our soul life, our dreams, and our emotional bodies, and especially kind of our collective archetypal experience as humanity. So to orient you, the lunar nodes are the nodes of their points, 2 points directly across from each other, where the moon's orbit intersects with the Earth's orbit. So you can see this as like when we, at least I'm seeing it as, we enter from the Earth into more of the moon sphere. It's like here's where they intersect. And this is really interesting too for Lionsgate, actually, because we're going to be talking about the lemniscate, and I can see that in sort of a three-dimensional way. This is kind of making that like this is the point of intersection, and on one side you'll have the ascending and on the other side you'll have the descending. They sort of intersect. So figure eights, the lemniscate, the number 8, Lionsgate, hey, they're all rhyming. That's going to be a big theme for today as we discuss upcoming events. So actually, why don't we go from more big picture into details? Let's talk about Lionsgate now, and then we'll get more into the specifics of the lunar node shift, as well as Jupiter being in Leo and the Leo solar eclipse that sort of are on either side that kind of sandwich this experience. Because right here at the heart, at the center, is Lionsgate. Now, Lionsgate comes to us every year the same time, and it peaks on August 8th. 8-8. There's that number again, the lemniscate. Lemniscate, Lionsgate. Okay, so Leo, the lion sign, is at the heart of the zodiac, and it's also connected to the heart. And I did a whole podcast episode on the energy of Leo, so you can check that out in more depth after this if you would like to see. But I've also read recently about a really interesting view of the symbol of Leo, which you can see this sort of circle and this kind of like tail coming out of it. And Leo, as a symbol, you can see as the earth here in the circle, then traveling out into the periphery of the cosmos. But the new Leo, which is ushered in with the great turning point of time 2,000 years ago, the new Leo is actually bringing the cosmos into the earth, bringing the periphery into the center, which I'm seeing as this idea of living what we know. We have these ideas, we have these concepts, we have these inspirations from the cosmos, from the archetypes, from our ideals, from religion, from spirituality, but how do we actually implement that on earth and live it from a free will place, from not being dictated outwardly to do it, but actually from us. Actually, you can see this actually moving back and forth in either direction, the center from us to the periphery and the periphery to the center. And that's where the heart comes in. How do we do this out of love? How can we actually live what we know and move through that portal of love? And I'm seeing that as that center point. If you think of a figure 8, if you think of a lemniscate, that infinity symbol, that center point where things cross. So in the last months, my husband and I had been doing a bit of a deep dive into the lemniscate. So I just thought it was so fitting to, talk about it here. But we found it really interesting, this idea of projective geometry, which is totally new to me. But something really struck me from it, of this idea of if you move through and beyond infinity, everything reverses. So I'm seeing this almost as this center point is like the point of infinity, and then everything reverses. So if you were to draw like a figure 8 in the air, or on a piece of paper, and take a look, it's like when you cross through that point where it crosses, this tiny point, then the direction of the sort of round, circle, however you're drawing it, reverses direction. And in our evolutionary picture, we crossed that point, everything reversed at a very central event 2,000 years ago. So we can also see Leo, the heart, the center, the lemniscate, this point as being connected to Christ consciousness. A really interesting example of the lemniscate too, I think, is in homeopathy, as I've learned about homeopathy, and this idea of like cures like this a plant that if it creates a certain reaction to you normally in the physical substance of it, if you potentize it and make it an energetic substance. It's interesting because I feel like in like the shaking of something, which is what they do in homeopathy, you actually like in a way create a kind of a lemniscate. Like I can see it. And then in biodynamic farming, for example, I also see this lemniscate and how they prepare and energize that substance, which was when they stir in one direction, and then you let that go and it whirls, and then you create the chaos and and you start going the other direction, then it finds order again and whirls in the other way. And it's like in that sort of crossing over, I can picture this as being a lemniscate. But anyway, yeah, so in homeopathy, it's something that would normally cause a kind of a discomfort. When it's potentized through this point, it goes to the other, it can actually help to cure that reaction or discomfort or whatever it is. So again, it's like when you move through that point of infinity, everything becomes reversed. So that's been a way that I've been really understanding this concept. So I do think there's this opportunity as we move through Lionsgate, if there's anything that really needs to, change, if you need to sort of enter a new level of being or a new paradigm, you can sort of consciously go through that point of change, and everything can start flowing in that direction for you. And our I consciousness, our I am, which begins to come in with Aries, that's the head, but it moves into the heart with Leo. Our I am moves into love. So we've got this connection of love, of freedom, of our individuality, and then of course opposite to Leo, we've got Aquarius, which is, I think I'm seeing this as how we can use our individuality out of love and out of freedom to help the structures of the collective, of community, of brotherhood, which is connected to Jupiter. So you can kind of see how all of these things are lining up at this time. And since we're bringing up the opposite across the wheel, not exactly opposite, because actually they work together, the opposite side of the wheel with Aquarius and Leo, we can talk for a moment too about the lunar nodes. And a lot of people, see the lunar nodes as kind of the comings and goings, the past and the future. What do we leave behind? What are we moving towards? And with Leo being in the south node, some more negative aspects or unbalanced, not purified through the heart, there we go, aspects of this sign can be ego, desire for power, like the earthly ego, not the higher ego, and false light. So you can see the Leo sign as being a kingly sign. I mean, the lion is like the king of the animals. And this kingly sign, we have this sort of earthly kingliness of material wealth and success versus an inner kingliness, which has to do with morality, which is something that I'm really learning about this year. And I also, see Leo as a sign really connected with creativity and being an artist. But art without love also would be a sort of false light or kind of an ego, lower ego driven activity. So those are some aspects that we can leave behind. And then as we look at Aquarius being in the north node, what we're moving towards. And of course, there are so many different theories and dates and things about the age of Aquarius, but we know that it's coming. We know that we're preparing for it. We know that, in some ways we're in it, and in some ways we're looking far into the future for it. But we know this is the direction. And with Aquarius, I just really see this idea of like a conscious community, brotherly and sisterly love, helping each other out of our capacities and releasing the old forms that no longer serve us. Cling as they might to us, we are shaking them apart. So that's how these 2 points, moving from one to the other, or seeing them in relationship with each other, seeing them as setting the stage of the astral plane and kind of, here's the playing field. This is what we're working on as humanity. This is how it makes a lot of sense to me. And that's why I was so excited to see that this node transit, this shift, ushers in the period of Lionsgate, which goes all the way until this solar eclipse in Leo at the end. And right there, the peak, the middle point is 8/8, August 8th. And you can also look at the 8th card in the tarot as being, the strength card with a lion and with a woman. in this idea of endurance, I always think of that card as being endurance. What can we endure? How can we move forward without feeling like we have to rush or just kind of fall asleep and stay where we were? How do we move forward rightly, in alignment, with patience, with strength, that inner kingliness? And Lionsgate is the alignment of the earth, the sun, and the star Sirius. And of course, the sun rules Leo. And this is also where we can see this archetype of Christ consciousness and it all kind of coming into alignment. And I'm really curious about Sirius and Sirius's relationship with the sun. I know some spiritual streams which see Sirius as being like the higher self of the sun. I'm not sure if that's quite where I would go with it. I think that I want to spend some more time with the concept of Sirius. I know it was important in ancient Egypt. I could even see it somehow related to the feminine. So I was thinking about the lion in the strength card. I'm letting you into my process a little bit here because I'm really like learning these things as I'm talking about them here. It's always, I mean, it should be. We should never be sort of like deadened into a concept, but kind of always learning. But seeing and reassessing, like, okay, what is true to me and what seems right. So I know that there's something really strong, a relationship between sun and the star of Sirius. And I want to understand that more, but for now I'm okay with being in the mystery of it, that just simply this alignment of Sirius and the sun and the earth in Lionsgate, which happens every year, is some kind of powerful energy portal. And I know a lot of people use this portal for manifestation, but I think what I want to encourage anyone listening to this is to look beyond kind of this idea of manifesting for myself or like for my earthly self or my desires, because we can easily get caught in sort of the desires, the back and forth swinging of the astral plane. And instead, let's try to like move this to a higher place and say, okay, this higher self, this I am consciousness that's beyond my current earthly form, that's connected to the whole, as we see in Aquarius, but has like this individual spark. How can I actually move my energy and creativity and inspiration into what's needed for the future? There's also a connection to the sign of Leo with the will and what we can will into the future through the portal of the heart. So I pulled a card for Lionsgate for this year from the Rumi Oracle by Alana Fairchild, as you know, one of my very, very favorite deck makers, writer. And so fittingly, you can't make this up, I got the Cloak of Christ. And of course, we were talking about Christ consciousness. And so I'm going to read the lines from Rumi, which go with this. It says, "In the school of humanity, when you become intimate with God, you reside on the King's throne and teach the angels the nature of the divine." And I also want to pose this idea because it's part of a visualization that I've been working with recently in some of my studies, that this astral plane, this sort of moon realm, in between these 2 points, we can see it represented in the zodiac where we're shifting. It is not just a plane in which things can be acted out unconsciously, which of course it is, and we experience that, this emotional level, this desire, this place of desire, this place of good or bad polarity, this place of conflict, and can be deception, but it's this place that connects us all on the soul level. This astral plane isn't a place to just sort of unconsciously be stuck in acting things out and repeating them, but you can also see it as an altar. This is the altar from which we can work. But who's we? It's not our earthly self, it's our higher I, it's our eternal self. It's our I am consciousness can work upon the altar of the astral plane. And that is how we align ourselves rightly. And how to do that, it's a constant practice. I'm still figuring it out. But I did want to talk about where we're coming from. Right before this shift, this nodal shift, we're coming from Virgo and Pisces. And I'm kind of seeing this too as sort of like a filtering out, a time of discernment. What is it that we can truly no longer bring with us? We've got this very like purifying archetype of Virgo, and then we've got this very watery, almost confusing element of Pisces, and we've been sort of swimming in this water and trying to find our way. I feel for the last year and a half, that's definitely where I've been, of all right, filtering, encountering what it is that actually, oh, this needs to change, this is not actually true, or this is not in alignment, or this is, and kind of having to filter the waters, as you were. That's what I'm sort of seeing with this Virgo and Pisces stage that we've been working on. And then what we're moving towards becomes a very intentional working of this next step, whatever that may be for you. So I also pulled a card for the nodal shift, which is the Legacy of Light, and this is from the Sacred Rebels Oracle, also by Alana Fairchild. We've had a theme thus far on the podcast of really using her decks. And this card carries a whole lot of sun energy, and it also talks about what we've come from and what we're moving towards, which I think is very fitting for the lunar nodes. So I'll read this first paragraph from the description. It says, "You are being asked to honor the legacy of light that is your sacred birthright. Take nourishment and support from those that have come before you, your ancestral lines, not only in blood, but also in spirit. Perhaps these are the beings that have inspired and motivated you to live as a sacred rebel from your heart and with belief in yourself. The more you are nourished by this legacy of light from your past, the more you become a bearer of the legacy for those that will be supported by your light in the future. This is a sacred endowment from the great universal source of light to humanity. It is the light of wisdom, creativity, radical courage, love, and respect that is passed down from the heart of each generation to the next. The legacy of light is your spiritual birthright to refine and shine your essence into the world, to be like a sun, radiant and unapologetic of your nature." And something that came to mind in reading that was this idea of the column of saints, a column of saints. This is something that I heard from Clark Strand of The Way of the Rose book, one of my very favorite books. And I think about that sometimes in this feeling of like, all right, I need to be in alignment with exactly what we're talking about, this higher I, this I am consciousness, my eternal self. I think of that like when I am in alignment with that, a column of saints can ray down through me, and it's like I suddenly I will have this spiritual support. And you could see these saints as, like saints that have come up from humanity, people who have risen to like initiate level and become saint-like and helped us and continue to help us. And then I can also see these spiritual beings who have sacrificed so much for humanity, for this even to be possible, for whatever's playing out on the stage that we're working through, for us to have this opportunity actually to do that in freedom. The beings that have sacrificed so much to make that possible, and the people who help us do so. It's like from both directions. That's how I see at least this column of saints. So I wanted to give you that imagery. So in conclusion, I see this as a time, this period of time around July 26th to August 12th especially, kind of concluding in this, and it's not really concluding, but just in setting the stage at least and looking at Lionsgate, ending with this dramatic, always feels dramatic, the solar eclipse in Leo, as being a time that we can work with some of this imagery. Hopefully, if it's inspired you at all, this is where I'll be working. And especially at this time, the 8-8, the Lion's Gate, seeing if anything comes through to you. Maybe paying attention to your dreams, since we're also kind of connecting to this realm, the dream realm, as part of this whole image. And as Jupiter is also at this time ushering Jupiter into Leo for this whole next year. We'll have a whole year until the next Lionsgate season of Jupiter being in Leo in this kind of an energy. Jupiter being expansion and growth, which can be painful, of course, as we grow and we expand. Expansion and growth, and also something that humanity is moving towards in the future. I see that also connected to this, like what we're looking towards in Aquarius on the opposite side of Leo here. So I also wanted to give you some flower essences that might be helpful to work with during the time of Lionsgate or into the whole, next year if you really especially resonate with them. I, of course, have these available on my Etsy shop, and I can make you a personalized blend as well, so you can check that out if any of these speak to you, and if you get some ideas about maybe a flower essence blend you want to take. Flower essences especially work on the astral, which is this emotional realm. In biodynamic gardening and farming, for example, the flowering plants are connected to the element of air, to the astral, to this emotional realm. And so you can see these as remedies potentized with the sun, again, so fitting, potentized with the sun with this particular intention to help heal our emotional realm. So one of my suggestions is the remedy of downy avens, because this helps if you're kind of stuck in the intellect and helps you move more, hopefully, through the heart and to the will. The other polarity for the downy avens, so downy avens is if you're like too kind of head focused, and then hawthorn would actually be the other side if your will is more like overpowering. Your will isn't aligned with your heart. It's kind of acting out sort of lower desires or desires for power, kind of some of those other qualities of Leo in the unbalanced state that we were talking about. And of course, we have the ultimate heart remedy, which is the wild rose, which can help to move you into action, like acting with your heart, especially if you're stuck in apathy. Love in action. I see wild rose as, there people have like kind of two main different ideas of the opposite of love. And I think all of this can be true. One idea of the opposite of love is apathy. And the other idea for the opposite of love is hatred. And for that, holly would actually be the remedy. So if you're coming up with a remedy for yourself, you might look at, okay, between downy avens and hawthorn, we've got these sort of two polarities on the other side of, with the heart being in the center. Is there one of these that I might need some extra help and guidance from the flowers to help purify and help bring into balance, whether it's head or heart? And then looking directly at the heart, you could think about between wild rose and holly. Do I tend more towards apathy, towards sort of stepping back and maybe deciding to fall asleep to something, or not caring about something, or just kind of deciding to have like non-action? Or is it holly? Is it sort of like an overreaction? Holly is helpful, yes, for hatred, but also for, jealousy, anger, these emotions from actually caring a lot, but it not being love. We're preparing for big change, and I think that's really clear also with this solar eclipse coming up at the end. The flower essence of walnut is really helpful in times of change, and the flower essence of oak is really helpful for endurance when we're talking about that quality. If you really resonated with that idea or that interpretation of the tarot card, the strength card, number 8, So I hope that this episode gives you something to work with, something to think about, something to notice what you experience or integrate somehow into your life. I hope it's been inspiring in some way for you, but I've really enjoyed sharing kind of what, I've been working with and thinking about and looking at in particular with this time. So thank you so much. One thing I'm considering talking about, so let me know if you're interested in this in the comments below, is why I tend to use tropical astrology when it comes to human beings versus using sidereal, which is used in biodynamic agriculture, and I do see that very much connected with the natural world. So I've been years in the making of kind of developing my own sort of feeling and understanding around tropical and sidereal astrology and the differences and how I personally have decided to use them. So that's something I'm thinking about talking about. So let me know if you're interested. And otherwise, I will see you next time. Thank you.